Dubstep. I love it. You might hate it, but today we're making it. So grab your matcha and get comfortable because I'm walking you through the making of a synthwave meets dubstep kind of set starter, hopefully banger. So this is what the session looks like in Reaper. There's kind of a lot of stuff going on, but honestly, the technique I'm about to show you is fairly brain dead, and that's kind of why this is fun. Like, I want to put this in perspective. I made most of this drop sitting on a friend's couch during some like downtime on my laptop, like trackpad only. It can be done. So this started off as two things. First of all, a bunch of just Serum presets. And the overall start of this was, it was supposed to be a bootleg remix of Shivering by Illenium and Spiritbox. I enjoy Illenium, I love Spiritbox, and I was like, this heavier drop of it is pretty good, but I think I could make it heavier. And so I just wanted to take a stab at remixing it. That's why this is in the key of E. I have like the original song here. I'm not going to play it because I don't want to get copyright claimed, but basically, after I made this drop, I realized that it retained very little of the original and could easily be extracted and turned into its own full song. And so the only thing I had to switch, just to jump ahead a little bit, was I used the original scream from Courtney. So I just swapped it out for a Sullivan King scream, and we're good to go. Regardless, let's get into the basic process I like to use to make these drops. It's very like just spam buttons until something sounds good or at least interesting. So like I said, I did have a basic pattern that I wanted to use, a basic rhythm, a basic little note structure. It's very simple, but there's something hooky there. There's something memorable. There's something with some structure to it. So, amongst other things, just a bunch of Serum presets, mostly from Splice. So that's mainly a rhythmic texture, this little kind of blah thing, kind of Reese-y. And if you let it go long enough, it has that little pitch bend, which will be very useful in a second. This is very 2014. So I'm just layering stuff to try to get kind of the minimum viable sound stack so everything sounds full enough. But that is not really enough for a modern drop. It's not all that interesting. So we start stacking Infiltrator. And the way I like to do this is basically just spam the dice button. This does, unfortunately, not actually randomize the patches. It just pulls up a random patch, but I'll take what I can get. So we've got a bunch of these. So like, I'm not shy about the fact that I used large chunks of that pretty much unaltered. Obviously, if you were to use this preset yourself, you might get similar-ish results, and maybe a producer would be able to tell, like, hey, they both used that same Infiltrator preset. First of all, an average listener is not going to care. And secondly, I am feeding it my own pattern, and so, like, it still retains the rhythmic characteristics of the original. And it sounds cool as hell, and I can modify it as in-depth as I want to, which I don't think was much in this case. So that's one kind of option. That's another option. Here's another option. I don't think I used much of this, because a lot of it's kind of screechy, and I don't love it. And some of this, I can automate that in, so you probably heard it automate in over the course of this held out note to get this like warped growl thing. So basically, I would just have an instance of Infiltrator. I would render that out so I could chop that up, and then I will proceed to abandon this little track folder entirely. It has served its purpose. So now I just have all of these lovely little audio clips. Let me just turn off my bus processing. I have all these different audio clips that I can start to extract the good bits from and kind of cobble together piecemeal to make hopefully a more compelling drop than either the original Serum patches or the just one infiltrator versions. And I've also done a bit of like extra processing on different versions of the same render. So like all of this, make sure I have that soloed. That's all from that one infiltrator patch, but this is almost so dynamic that I felt the need to crush it with OTT just like a little bit. And also this section was a bit quiet relative to this section, and so I have just literally brought the track up a dB. So that hopefully flows together pretty well. So there's a big old gap there, so we need to fill that with something. But first, I'm also going to layer another sound to give that initial like impact. So that's a different infiltrator preset that I've just extracted the balk from and nothing else. No other layering there. And then, okay, let's fill in this gap. So there's your metal scream. And I've also got a bit of processing on that. Once again, 2 stacked infiltrators with the mix level being fairly low. Like I said, this is a little bit brainless. So by the way, here's kind of the structure, because while this feels random, it actually is fairly deliberate. We're basically doing a little call and response thing, or like a call and response, call and then varied response. So we've got this impact that brings you into your main rhythm that gets responded to by kind of a secondary rhythm. Response. With it getting broken up, there's going to be a snare hit here in a second. And then we repeat that and then hit you with something that's like totally different, but still flows nicely. It's like a little more staccato, but also a little more drawn out. And those 2 elements are as follows. I mentioned that that little like rapid hit thing would come back. And then here's our automated saw warble thing. And you can hear it get like increasingly phasey. So I've literally just stacked those. Then we repeat. And then you'll notice, okay, now we're starting to add even more variation. I don't want to just spam the same drop over and over. I want to add different elements. So now here's where it starts to get meta and a little bit ridiculous. I have basically taken this first section of the drop, rendered that out with just all of the basses soloed together, and then stacked more infiltrator on that resampled resample. So now I have a bunch of additional little bits and pieces to play with and rearrange as I see fit. So these aren't particularly different from the originals, but then these are. So you've got this kind of crazy cutting in and out. That is pretty abrasive, and so I don't want to use that all the time, but to cut away to, I think it works pretty well. Plus this little layer with some pew-pews, which is fun. And then we go into an increasingly intense version of this drawn out and staccato thing, where this is screechier. This has a little metal scream coming in. Which is kind of fun. And this one like phasered into oblivion. So we've basically done our first section, and then we've iterated on that section with a bit of additional chaos. Now let's kind of flip it. We literally just like repeat sections, and then I have this little pitch sweep, and that scream resampled, plus that pew pew again. Doesn't even sound particularly human anymore. Kind of like a banshee or something. And then at this point, let's get the drums involved, because right here, we're basically now just repeating the first drop, other than this kind of spammed section. So let me turn on my bus processing, semi Q, and Duck by Devious Machines, the homie. And I have this being triggered by MIDI. That way it can follow the kick. I mean, it's mostly just doing like a two-step thing, but then it breaks from that a little bit. So the drums are dead simple. They do that. So this is a free drum sampler plugin. I use it. It's adequate. So we've got like a Disciple Pack kick, snare. I don't think I ended up using this. I ended up using just the built-in preset cymbal in this plugin because it is perfectly adequate. And it just does that. And then for the second half of the drop, I have this snare thing with a bunch of lows cut because it kind of has a kick together with it. But I just want to extract this metallic snare clap thing. And then just like a simple little 808 hi-hat. Like I said, these drums are super simple. No bus processing, it's just kind of there. And that's all you need. So we do our little fake out drop, bring in our snare. So this process is highly iterative, or highly spam things repeatedly, depending on how much intelligence you want to assign to this process. I think it's a little bit of both. I think you can be careful and considered, but also very free-flowing, experimental, and maybe a little bit stupid. And that's fun. So real quick then, let's go into the build-up. So I ended up rendering out that entire drop and just bringing it into this other project. I have shown most of this other project in a different video on my main channel where I walked through a hybrid Roland MC101 and DAW synthwave production approach. I'll link that at the end of this video. So I'm not going to go super in depth into the synthwave bit of this, but here's what it sounds like. So then So we start building, and that brings us into our full drop, just rendered out and dropped into here. I have no shame about that not being like a proper way to do it. Even more so because there are some like little clicks of like envelopes not kind of hitting right. And so I just ran everything through Isotope declick and then only used the declicked version when I absolutely needed it, and that works fine. Once again, not proper in the slightest, but I think it gets the job done. So here's how you transition from synthwave to dubstep. First of all, we have our kind of rolling bass line here. So we're gonna keep that going. So, and I let a bunch of those synths just ring out into this new section. And that little rolling bass line keeps us kind of driving forward. We have some little sound effects and some impacts from various sources. This is fun. And by the way, this is also rendered out from an impact being run through Infiltrator, I think a couple of times. Same with this little pew-pew, which is fun. So now we've basically kind of removed all of our synthwave elements. We've got some little sci-fi noises and kicks. We're kind of establishing that there is a switch happening. This is meant, as I mentioned earlier, to be kind of a set starter. And so you kind of, you walk on with the welcome to the Neon City, which is this.
Welcome to the Neon City.
For the set that I'm not going to play. And then this is like the oh shit moment when you realize this is about to go somewhere and take a bit of a left turn. Let me quickly show you the text-to-speech because this is just fun. I found like a random text-to-speech website. I don't even remember which one at this point. So here's what it sounded like originally.
It appears the synthwave train is experiencing interruptions.
So we bring that through some pitching, And I've brought down the pitch and the formant goes up.
It appears the synthwave train is experiencing interruptions.
And that makes it sound a lot more computery. And I think that is good. Infiltrator?
It appears the synthwave train
This is for kind of the spooky bit. I'm going to keep that off for now.
It appears the synthwave train is experiencing interruptions. We will be taking a brief
EQ?
detour. It appears the synthwave train.
This goes a long way because I want it to sound like it's like a little voice over a loudspeaker.
It appears the synthwave train is experiencing interruptions.
That really goes a long
We
way.
will be taking a brief detour. Please stand by.
And then you get your kind of spooky bits, like the robot has gone a little bit rogue.
It appears
Like, this is stupid. This is really dumb. But it's really fun, I think. Okay, so at this point, we've got our kind of lore established. We've backed off on the synthwave elements. Let's start to go into our proper build. So a few things going on here. First of all, once again, an impact, pretty generic riser. We'll get back to that in a second. Sound effects. And importantly, we start to tease the bass just a little bit. We don't want to like spoil the drop and give it no impact, but if the drop truly comes out of nowhere, it will also have no impact because it hasn't been established, it doesn't feel earned, there's not been any energy buildup. We need to hear those basses just a little bit. So I rendered out a no sidechain, just bass stack soloed track. And I filtered it way down. Like I've made no alterations otherwise. Just filtered it way down both ways. And we slowly bring that in. Never let it become too audible. And then I start to repeat it. Just that one section. And then we do our little pre-drop vocal, and then we go into the full drop. So I haven't given away the drop basses, but I've teased them. And that really goes a long way towards bridging the gap between the breakdown and the drop, and goes a long way towards making the full bass drop feel earned, not just like it came out of nowheresville. In addition, to build more kind of hype, we have this little pitch bend thing. And that is done just within Reaper's own tools. You can get a pitch envelope. And that is our cue to like build up a lot more frantically. Also this little pew pew sound. And then very simple snare with the pitch being brought up via automation. And I'm also cutting lows and highs. Little 4 on the floor cymbal. And
brace your eardrums.
The evilest version of the computer voice. Once again, this is meant to be fairly tongue-in-cheek. We go into our drop, and then the song goes on its merry way from there. If you'd like to see the making of the synthwave side of this track on my main channel, you can check this out up over here. And if you'd like some more dubstep production, I've got you covered up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video at some point. Woo! I am caffeinated today.